Thank you, everyone. My name is Dodzi, and I'm just going to be today giving you a little bit of an overview of user experience design and design thinking. This is for OKC Design Tech. We just started. Just like Bianca said, this is our first meetup, so thank you very much for coming and giving us a chance. Let's go ahead and get started. Welcome. I am a Techlahoma volunteer, and I am also the Oklahoma local leader, OKC local leader for an organization called the Interaction Design Foundation. So if you're looking at the academic, in the books, study part of design, the how-to, the psychology, all that information is there. I borrow a lot from their resources. They have really great resources, and they've been around for a long time. And Techlahoma is awesome. Bianca already said how awesome they are. So today, what are we going to go over? I'm going to tell you a little bit about the new group. I'm going to tell you about user experience design. Oftentimes, it's abbreviated UXD, or even UX. You might see it that way, too. So if you see it that way, don't be alarmed. It means user experience or user experience design. I'm going to talk about why UXD is important, give you some general concepts that you might want to know just to get started, some resources. There are resources all over the internet. These will also help you get started. And preparation for our workshop, which we have coming next month, where you'll actually get to apply some of these in a controlled environment so you can learn what's going on with user experience design. So really quick about OKC Design Tech. So in Oklahoma City, we have a really strong tech community, and we also have a design community as well. If you're looking for tech meetups or anything like that, Techlahoma has it. We have the Python group, the C# group. If you're looking for a supportive design community, there's Design Dev OKC. They're not affiliated with Techlahoma, but they are a really supportive group if you're looking for networking, how to get into design in Oklahoma City. They're really good. And you can find lots of other things on the internet. If you want to find any information about anything, it's on the internet in the form of videos and tutorials. So what we want to do is we're trying to be the convergence of design talks, tech talks, and workshops. We really want to be that overlap between what everything is, because it's not just design and it's not just tech. When it comes to a product, you put them all together, and that's how you get a product. It's the combination of all these things. And that's what OKC Design Tech is. So our format, so that we're different, because once again, there are lots of talks around, you can get lots of information, is every even-numbered month, we're going to have speakers on design topics. So just a general topic on design, something that's good to know, something that you can go home, take, and study on. On odd-numbered months, we're going to have workshops for concept reinforcement. So you have your concepts, you're going to take it into a controlled environment with other people and actually do it. We think that that's very important, because once again, you can get all this information off the internet, but actually doing it is a completely different thing. So really quick, it's not just me. We have lots of people who have volunteered to help run this group. We have Bianca Alora, she's in the back, and she has a background in actually doing interior architecture design for hospitality. So how do you design spaces so that they're accessible, inclusive, the physical on that end? And right now she's doing design work for the United States government in the airline industry. So she has a lot of experience in that aspect of it, where it's slightly away from tech and also interacts with the tech. And we think this is good, because if you just focus on tech, you're missing out on all the knowledge that other industries have already curated and come up with on this topic. Next, we have Jennifer Droke. She does industrial design. She's a student at OU, and she actually works on space rovers, which is really cool. So like, you're talking industrial design, like that's just like, whoa, like something that goes out into space and lands someplace, and robotics research as well. So she's a really good resource there. And then we have Amy La. She does UI and UX design, graphic design, and web development. She is also a student at OU and is a computer science major. So that's who we have all together on our group. So feel free to contact any one of them through any of the methods that I'm going to show you at the end of this talk. However, just with us alone, we can't sustain this. We need volunteers. So we need speakers, we need volunteers. If you'd like to volunteer, please reach out to us. We'd gladly connect with you and tell you how you can get involved, right? Because we do need you, 100%. Not Uncle Sam. So let's go over user experience design a little bit. User experience design is, what is it? It's kind of a nebulous concept because it's an overarching, I want to say discipline, that's comprised of lots of other areas. So you might hear UX and UXD and think of the surface, the visuals, how things look. Probably like this. All the pretty things. It's awesome. However, below that, you have interaction design, experience mapping, information architecture, metrics that you have to go ahead and analyze, A/B testing. It just goes on and on. Those dots just keep going on and on and on. It goes really deep. And we can't go that deep today, so all we're going to do is dip our toes into the water, kind of see what it's all about. So really quick, let's take a look at user experiences. These are things that happen every day to all of us. You had lots of experiences on your way here. They're good ones, they're bad ones. The good ones are probably transparent. You don't even know, you just take them for granted because they happen all the time. You're like, yeah. We're going to take a look at that in just a little bit. But these can be physical. They can be services or they can be virtual. Virtual is where a lot of the focus goes with software and apps, but all of these other places as well have elements of user experience design. So let's take a look at the bad. And if we focus just on the bad, we could be here all day because we all have pain points. We all have things that we don't like about different things that we interact with. I'm just going to cover a few of them. Really quick, we have physical services and software virtual. And if we're looking at the physical, the first ones you might see would be Norman doors. Does anyone know what a Norman door is? No? A Norman door is this concept that was coined by Don Norman, who's pretty much the father, we kind of see him as the father of user experience design. And it's basically a concept where you have a door, it has a handle, and you would think you'd pull it, but you have to push, and you run into the door. It's happened to everyone. There are lots of those. And he went through and he looked at physical things, and he said, how can we design physical things so that they're easier to interact with? So a Norman door, if you've ever run into that, that's a bad user experience. Overly packaged items. We have these a lot. There's frustration-free packaging. The reason they say that is because they know that packaging is frustrating. I had an experience where I had this little itty-bitty SD card that I had to cut out of this plastic box that was in cardboard. I was cutting it, and then the package cut me back. That wasn't fun. So that would be a really bad experience. Let's take a look at services. Anyone who's flown has gone through a TSA checkpoint. They provide us with a service. The service is to keep us safe. Yet it is the most painful experience that you will go through in a lot of your life. My sandals are 1 centimeter thick, but you still have to take them off. Why? I don't know. I don't think I'm going to do anything bad, but they're trying to keep us safe. Another one are dead-end customer support channels. Just a show of hands, who has had an experience with dead-end customer support channels? You have? Yep. The most frustrating one I've had is I was living abroad. My passport expired, and I needed to get it renewed. I didn't know how to do it, so I went to the consulate website. They said, if you have any questions, call us. Called. They said, if you have any questions, emailed us. Emailed. They said, if you have any questions, look at the website. Got nowhere with that. Very frustrating. And we're going to visit that in just a little bit because there's a reason why it becomes that. Also, in the software world, software that changes the user experience too fast. I'm sure we're all familiar with Skype. Skype is infamous for pushing out new design changes all the time. I don't know how many versions of Skype are actually active out there right now. Each one's different. On iPad it's different, on Windows is different, on Mac OS is different, and then the next day they push an update and it's all different and you can't find your chat window. Also, nag screens. Please sign up for our newsletter. We're all familiar with those. Once again, the reasons behind all of this. So let's take a look at the good user experiences in all of these areas. Physical. Now, you probably didn't think about this, but whenever I talk about it, you probably will. Lights. Lights are a user experience. And when I go into detail on this, you'll understand a little bit better, but we take it for granted. Good product packaging, all those unboxing videos that you see on YouTube, those are another experience. You're experiencing the unboxing. That's why there are videos on that. With services, they're mainly invisible. If you interacted with a service and the user experience was good, then you probably didn't think about it. And once again, with software, it's also not noticed. Now, user experience design can make life better for us. Recently, the thing that has really impressed me are the times that you call a phone service, and instead of waiting in the queue, they say, we'll call you back when it's your turn. You can get on with the rest of your life, and you get your call back. It's really nice. Predictive algorithms. We're all used to these on things like Spotify, Pandora, Netflix. It kind of knows what you want at that time. It's also a dangerous thing. We'll touch on that a little bit. Or there's an app for anything that we have out there. That's just an amazing experience. I need a scientific calculator. Download it, I'm good to go. You don't have to go to the store and buy that anymore. Now, user experience design can also make life a little bit dangerous. And I'll explain what I mean. If you go to a grocery store and you have the pay by weight bar, and you know that maybe a pound is $5, maybe, just a guesstimate. And you go in there like, I only need to eat $5 worth of food. You go, you pick a box. It's a fairly big box. It can probably hold 3-4 pounds. Your instinct as a human is to fill that box, despite the fact that you know you only need 1 pound of food. And it's semi-intentional that they do this. So you have to be aware of it. The agreement for terms of service. We don't read these things. I did once. I read it in front of a Verizon agent. I wasted 20 minutes of his life. But for the most part, we don't read these, and that's a dangerous thing for us because we don't know what we're agreeing to. Customer support channels designed for frustration, just like we talked about. Bundled software, that's going down, but there's still pieces of software, malware. It masquerades as software that you would use to collect your user data and send it elsewhere. And endless scrolling. Endless scrolling is perilous. It's awesome because you get to see what you want, but eventually you get into the Skinner box habit of scrolling because you want to see what's next to see if you get that next new interesting thing. And before you know it, it's 1 a.m., you need to go to bed, and you're going to be cranky at work the next day. So it can be very dangerous. So really quick, why is user design important? And the reason why we're talking about this is the bar today is higher than it was before. I went into the Wayback Machine, and I got the Amazon website from 10 years ago. And this is what it looked like. It's actually not bad. They were doing a lot of good things with the website. You can kind of see they had 3D effects on the buttons instead of the flat design that's pretty ubiquitous right now. As well, their spacing is really good, but if you take a look on the left, all of these categories, these departments, I would click on one of those, it would take me to a new web page, so it'd force a web page reload, and then I'd be in that category and I'd have to search. It would slow me down. So they redesigned it to use a design pattern called a mega drop-down or a mega drop-down menu box, where you can kind of go through and you can dive into the category you want very quickly. It saves you page reloads. It helps you get to where you want to go faster. I also went back and took a look at an iPhone app 10 years ago. You can see it's a little bit cluttered. Once again, the 3D effect was there. There are some other things. It's still good. But in comparison to today, where they're really trying to use white space to draw your attention to where you need to go and the focuses that they want you to focus on, it's completely different. So this is the standard. This is where we're at right now. And like I said with the lights, because that's the standard, that's what we're used to. And this concept is called habituation. I'm going to draw your attention to something that you probably weren't listening to, the air handler. You can now hear the sound of the air handler. You probably weren't paying attention to it because you had habituated and lost track of it. But now that I've said it, you're going to be like, yeah, it's kind of loud, right? Habituation is, it happens with a lot of animals, most animals, including us, is whenever you keep getting response and stimulus, you get used to it. And then that just becomes normal and you don't react to it anymore unless something changes drastically. And this happens with TV too, or with technology as well. For example, high-definition TVs. You can't go back to a CRT screen anymore. Just, you see the pixels, it's bad, it's big, it's heavy. The HD TV is the new normal, right? 8K isn't quite there yet, but when 8K is the normal, we'll look back at the old YouTube videos and say, I can't even watch this. How come it was so grainy? Because you've habituated to the new technology. So let's revisit that light bulb that I talked about. The arrow down below, this represents technological advancement. And we probably started off like this. I'm just summarizing. But we found fire, or we found fire someplace and then learned that we could use it, and things changed. That was big. All of a sudden, the things we could eat changed. We could stay warm. The places we could go changed. The things we could do changed. The tools we could make changed. Then we learned how to tame it. You get torches, like, oh, light. So I can stay up later. I can do more things. I can be where I want to be at the dark. I can see. I can stay safe. To these. These are gas street lights. So before we had normal electric street lights, there were gas street lights. They had their own perils, explosions, etc. For the most part, they were okay. But as you notice, like, as we move forward, it's less of a big thing. It's like, oh yeah, well, that's the next thing. Then we got the incandescent light bulb. We've all seen those. And now LEDs. In comparison, the LED in comparison to fire is amazing. But in comparison to the last step, it's not that great. We've habituated. Lights are in our lives every day. The only time that you're like, oh man, this light doesn't work is when it's not working. When you don't have it, that's when you take it for granted. Because there's so much technology that went into getting us to where we are right now. So let's take a look at it from the perspective of a desktop. I'm an elder millennial. Don't know why I'm a millennial, but I am. And I remember all of these things. So we got the fax machine. It looks like an encyclopedia. Encyclopedias were expensive. $600 for like half a volume or something like that, and then they'd have to go and sell you another volume and all this stuff. Like everything on that desk, these are all things that we used to have to physically interact with. And now this swath of apps handles that for us. And with these two devices, we can get all of the benefit that we had before. So all of this study about design is very important. So why is it important for those in tech, right? It's because everyone in the tech team has a part in the design process. Whether you're a designer or not, you have a part in it. You're interacting with it in some way, shape, or form. Another thing is, those that seem the farthest away from design might actually have the most influence on it. So it's important to know that. One example is, recently I was part of a project where maybe for some customers we had to add a button to 3 or 4 screens, which would mean we'd have to tell our customers, this is the new button. These are the screens that you'd have to interact with it on. I would be the one who would have to implement it. I'm on a legacy system. That's going to take a lot of work. But after a little bit of deliberation, our DBA was able to say, if we do this instead, we don't even need the button there. The customer sees the benefit. They don't have to interact with the button. The business sees the benefit. I don't have to put in 2 weeks of work implementing something that might frustrate the user. They don't have users coming back to them saying, hey, why do we have to do this? This doesn't work. It's not fast enough anymore. Because now it's invisible. It's transparent. It's at that place where we can take it for granted. It's also important because we don't get to touch all parts of the process. It's very rare that someone is part of the design process from start to finish in every capacity. That's why you have different roles in your companies. They're all part of the process. It's also important because business goals force some of the design decisions. Why do you always see those sign up for our newsletters? Because a newsletter, if you add your email address to that newsletter, that's a potential point where they can convert you onto a product. And businesses need to make money to stay alive. It's just a fact of life. Everyone on the team, we're working on a product together. We want it to be successful, but based on where we're at, we're all tugging on it in slightly different directions. So knowing more about the process can make it smoother between your team. Oh, I understand why they made this decision. I don't like it, but I understand why. I understand the business reason behind it. And there are gaps waiting to be filled in the process. We'd like to think that handoffs are clean. Somebody makes a mock-up, gives it to a dev. The dev takes that mock-up, builds it, tests it out. Everything is cool, smooth. But it doesn't quite work that way. And being able to fill in those gaps just a little bit can go a long way. So based on that, I'm just going to take you on some general concepts for user experience design. We're not going very deep. I'm going to start with the big concepts and go just a little bit deeper. Once again, I'm not really introducing you to all of them because these are what we're going to dive into in our workshops. How to do these. Some of these are deliverables. Some of these are actions that you take. Some of these are how you analyze the data that you gather. It's all very interesting stuff. So first we have user research. Usability and accessibility. Prototyping and mockups, these are the things that say this is how our product is going to work, theoretically. It changes once we test it. User onboarding, how do we introduce a user to our product? How do we get them to use it, right? You have this new complicated system. If you don't onboard the user, they can't use it. They say, I'm going to try something else. Design patterns. These are just concepts and language that you can use to get ideas faster so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time as you're designing. And finally, design thinking. And they all work together. They're not really separated, and they're not really connected. We'll see as we go along. First of all, with user research, we have these things that are usually deliverables, which are surveys. You get surveys to the users. You find out what they're looking for. And then you translate that into action plans, or how you're going to go about with the rest of your product. Usage metrics. We're all familiar with these. On software, it says, would you like to send us analytics metrics? Those are metrics that the companies use to determine who's clicking what button, how many times, how frustrated are they, how many times does it crash. It's all very important. User journey maps. This is where you find out the user starts here, they have a problem, they want to solve it. How do they solve it? How do they solve it now? How can they solve it with our product? Personas. Those are who our users are, a generalization. And they can go wrong very many ways. You have to be careful with them, but they can be very, very helpful as well. And then card sorting. How does the user see categories? What do they think the categories are? Where are they going to go? Next, we have usability and accessibility. They're separate, but they're also together. One is affordances. And this goes back to Don Norman. An affordance is just a concept that says, based on how something is designed, you're naturally going to want to use it one way. Or, based on your environment, you're going to try and use an item in a certain way. That's an affordance. So keys look like they can be pushed, so you will push a key naturally. You won't pull a key, it just doesn't feel natural that way. You'd pull a handle, but if it's a push door that has a handle, you run into it because the affordance is incorrect. We also have information sent. If you're on a website, you don't read the whole entire website top to bottom. You kind of scan in an F shape. You're like, what's at the top? What's next? This is where I'm going to go. Information sent is how strong the information has been, or how well the information has been organized so that a user can get to the information quickly. Information architecture, that's kind of at the back end, but it's your categories, how everything is together. That can affect the end interface quite a bit. And then the usability type concepts like screen reader compatibility, especially with websites that's important, and color contrast. Not everyone sees all colors. So it's important to understand the needs of people. In fact, had a conversation with one of my coworkers the other day. If I take off my glasses and I blow this screen up to 1,000%, I still can't read what's on the screen at this distance. I'm really blind. I have to have glasses. Next, we're looking at prototyping and mockups. So you have your concept sketches. You need to have a concept before you go ahead and make a product. And you'd want to have lots of ideas. The more ideas, the better, because you'll eventually start seeing patterns and coming to a conclusion. And then you'll be able to throw away whatever you don't need. Wireframes, that's just a general place where you can go. You get your wireframes ready, and you can start testing those out. You can start seeing what your reactions are going to be. Same with paper prototypes, where you'd put them in front of the user. The user would interact with them in some shape or form or some fashion. And then mockups, which is, this is what the end product is probably really going to be. Next, we have user onboarding. And like I said before, this is basically bridging knowledge gaps and helping the user adapt to a new situation or a new product so that it's not as scary for them. You may have designed the product, you may know how it's supposed to be used, but your user does not. So you need to onboard them somehow. Now, a long time ago, and just an example of kind of onboarding and a concept called skeuomorphic design, where skeuomorphic design is taking a concept that we already know physically and then kind of changing it and adapting it to a new technology. So I'm just going to put this picture up and take a guess, let you guys take a guess what this is. Yeah, that's right. It's an early car. And why were early cars designed like this? Bicycles, that's one. Exactly, horse-drawn carriages. So people were used to bicycles, so bicycle tires, ubiquitous. You can just toss those on. It's like, oh, it's a motorized bicycle thing. And people were used to using horse-drawn carriages where you're sitting upright and you hold it like this. So that's a natural position. It slowly morphed from that into what it is now. Just like in that early picture of the iPhone design that I showed you, they went from a lot of skeuomorphic design paradigms to what we have now, which are flat, very smooth designs that everyone's kind of used to now, but they wouldn't have been used to at first. There's another example as well. So you can really see sitting upright, kind of like you'd be driving a horse. It's not even covered. It really feels like a carriage. So the user's still comfortable in that aspect. Next, let's take a look at some design patterns. So we have the shopping cart and checkout. This is a design pattern. You talk about a shopping cart and checkout. There are things that are going on in your head like, oh yeah, I've interacted with the shopping cart before. I know how that works. I know what needs to go. We need to have a number that signifies the items in the shopping cart. We need to have a place where the user can click to see what's in the shopping cart. That's a design pattern. It gets you there quickly. You may redesign it or implement it differently for your use case. And these are very digital concepts, but there are obviously design patterns in the physical world as well. I just didn't go there in this presentation. Breadcrumbs. Breadcrumbs are a design pattern. You see them on websites. I want to go back to where I was before. That's why they're called breadcrumbs, like Hansel and Gretel. How do I get back? Progressive disclosure. That is a paradigm where you're allowing the user to get more information when they need more information, or only showing the user information when it is necessary. Like tooltips. Tooltips would be one. This presentation is also, in a way, progressive disclosure. I'm only giving you what I want to show you when it's necessary. I could have given you all the slides and said, there's my presentation. But instead, I'm slowly walking you through the story. And then we have dark patterns. This, for me, is the most interesting because dark patterns usually tie very strongly to business goals, and they allow me to use the word nefarious because sometimes they are just very, very, very dirty. For example, there's one that we call the opt-in, opt-out dance of death, where on a screen you say, uncheck if you don't want us to share your information. Check this, and you just go through the list, and you confuse the user as much so that you still get something out of them. The user has to go through and read. Just like the terms of service that I told you about, we don't read it. Terms of service, sometimes it'll be like, sign up. Little star at the bottom of your website. It says, by signing up, you agree to our terms of service. That means that we can collect all of your user information and then send it off to a different place where we use it for nefarious reasons if need be. Or even the box at the all-you-can-eat bar where you pay per pound. That's also a dark pattern. Finally, we're taking a look at design thinking. These are the steps in design thinking, and this is usually where we start. You want to understand where the user is. You want to define the problem. You think of ideas on how you can solve that problem. You prototype it, you test it, everything is good, you're done, you've got a product, you're ready to sail. But it doesn't quite work like that. Maybe in testing you realize that you didn't understand the problem, or in testing you found some other ideas that could solve what you had better. Or maybe you had a prototype that leads to the same thing. Hey, here's a new idea, let's try that. Or maybe during testing you found what the real problem was. It's not linear. It's a process. These are the steps that are a part of it, and you'll go around in circles. It's usually time that determines when you stop, or budget that determines when you stop. If you had infinite time, infinite money, you'd be in this getting the ultimate design answer to all problems. So this is pretty cool. We'll be taking a look at this a little bit more. Now, really quick, here are some places where you can get started. These are just talks on YouTube, podcasts, really good information. They're in the slides. You don't need to write them down. If you go onto the Meetup page, the slides are all up there, so you can get that. The Future, they have been doing their YouTube channel since about 2015, thereabouts. Really good stuff, sometimes really painful stuff, because they're very blunt about maybe you're doing design because you want to be in business, so you need to focus on the business aspects. Or maybe you didn't put in enough work. They're really blunt, but it's all very good information. Tough love. High Resolution Design, this podcast is awesome, where even industries and industry leaders that you think weren't concerned with design actually are. The Phil Gilbert one is a great one because IBM, if you remember IBM computers, there were these big, bulky computers that are just like, I'm not carrying that around. They're very, very design-focused now. Very, very focused on getting those metrics and improving their products. And then we have Daniel Burka from Google Ventures as well. Those are the two great talks, but there are 25 talks there, all amazing. And then the book that the book club is working on, Change by Design by Tim Brown. A lot of the books that IDEO comes out with, actually probably all of the books IDEO comes out with, are amazing. So these are all good places to start. Now really quick, we're going to go ahead and we're going to prepare for that workshop. But before that, I asked a question. I got some answers from people. How do you experience air travel? And the answers were pretty interesting. I got, see here, someone that said that they enjoy air travel by sitting by the window and drinking Sprite, which was the positive. Awesome. Somebody said they're afraid of heights, don't enjoy it. Somebody said that layovers are awesome, like the layovers, right? There are a few people that said air travel is absolutely not fun. TSA checkpoints is one. There are other pain points as well. Turbulence is another. That's not fun. We can't help that very much. But there are other aspects. No one talked about the seats. You might pay just a little bit more money for a bigger seat, more legroom, because it's not fun being cramped up in the airplane, especially if you're on international travel, like 12 hours like this, and you get off, it's not fun, your knees are all stiff. So, in the workshop that we're going to be having on September 11th, we're going to be designing a better airplane seat. Going to be pretty cool. Bianca and Jennifer are going to be heading the workshop. It will be really, really fun because you'll get to go into design thinking. You'll see where unlimited design can take you, and then we'll go from there. Awesome. So we want to start a discussion with you. These are our channels that you can contact us with. And I have a question for you. If you could respond to us on our social media channels. The first one is, which topic from today's talk would you want to learn more about? That would really help us out so that we know how we're going to tailor the rest of our talks, where we're going to go with our workshops, what we're going to do. Another one is, and this is a little bit more difficult, more involved, if you have time, I want you to go through and think about the things, the experiences that you've just started taking for granted, like the light bulb, and going back and saying, this is actually amazing, I've just taken it for granted this whole time. Hit us up on these channels, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. And on the Meetup as well. So you can hit us up on Meetup as well at OKC Design Tech, so that you can also get information about our next meetups. These are the references that I used. More information for you. You can check those out on the slides. Does anyone have any questions? Yes?
When you were
So the question was, do I know about user-centered design, and is it human-centered design, and is it related to this design thinking and user experience design? Yes, it is. It's just a different focus on how you're applying all of this, and I translated it back to user-centered design, human-centered design. Those are also slightly different. They're slightly nuanced. User-centered design is, what does the user want? And how am I going to apply design thinking to what the user wants and needs? While human-centered design is more like, how can I make this better for a user as a human being? But they're all related. They're not separate. They're not 100% separated from each other. That was a good question.
I'll take that. Well, human-centered has a lot more involved in user research on the person and what their tasks are. They are interlinked, but there is a lot more on the human side when it comes to human-centered design.
So just to reiterate, what Bianca said is, with human-centered design, it's more about the human aspect, human research as a human. It would probably dive more into anthropology than it would into getting this application done as well. Because UX spans a lot of different disciplines. There's psychology, anthropology, all right, anthropology, behavioral. Yep. Any other questions? Yes? Okay, so the question was to talk a little bit more about what pain points are, what it means. So a pain point is usually just an area of frustration for a user. It can be a goal that they want to achieve where there's no solution for it right now at this point in time, or it could be a problem that they have with a product. For example, I would like to be able to teleport. That is a pain point. Like, I don't want to, if I don't have to fly, I don't want to fly. If I could go there instantaneously, I don't even have to drive, don't have to own a car, that's a pain point. There's nothing right now that solves that for us as humans that we know. So that is a pain point a lot of us probably have. I could sleep in an extra 20 minutes if I didn't have to commute to work, if I could just teleport. So that would be one. But then the other one could be with my car. I have a gas car, and I always have to fill it up with gas. That is also a pain point. Right? I have to pay for gas, I have to go to a gas station, I have to fill it up. I overfill it because I want to get as much as I can, and it spills everywhere. Those are all pain points too, and they can also be solved. Those are very tangible, and that's in a product. So an automobile company might be doing research onto how can we ensure that the tank is 100% full and doesn't overflow. Does that answer the question? Okay, any others? Thanks a lot for coming out. We look forward to seeing you guys at the workshop.